Good evening, 49er faithful. It is Friday night, and I am here, your host, Rob Schuh, with my esteemed guest, Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack, it is a jam-packed news day for the NFL. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Like you said, it's Friday, which means no work for the next 2 days. It's going to be a fun weekend. Let's get this thing going. Let's talk some 49er football.
Let us talk a little bit about 49ers football. I mean, the chat is already popping. 49ers Twitter is going off. People are abuzz. And in case anyone has been underneath a rock for the last couple of hours, the reason why is Deshaun Watson has officially been traded. Well, I don't know that it is technically official. He has been traded, though. He has been moved on to the Cleveland Browns. Tom Pelissero reported that it was 3 first-round picks plus at least 2 other assets. I've not seen more concrete terms coming out there, but then Schefter putting out the big tweet. Every dollar of Deshaun Watson's new 5-year, $230 million deal is guaranteed, per sources, sets that new record. I mean, that is wild to me. Not only was Cleveland sort of the dark horse that swept back in after we had heard that they had been eliminated from contention by Deshaun Watson, they come back in, and how did they do it? By showing him the money. I mean, it's wild to me that you're taking on someone who has the backstory that Deshaun Watson does, and you give him $230 million guaranteed.
Yeah, it's wild. And not only that, but they've even structured it. I mean, it makes sense in that they've structured it in a way that this first year his base salary is only going to be like a little over $1 million. It's whatever
Right.
the lowest that they can get it. And that even helps him out because the first 6 weeks of the season, or the 6 weeks, if he does get suspended, it helps him in terms of his cost of the suspension is lower than what his original contact, what would have been if he had stayed in Houston. So everything is playing in his favor. $230 million guaranteed is just wild. And maybe that's where they had to go in order to be able to secure it and actually get it done. Because even though we had those reports yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning. Yeah, it was yesterday morning, right? When they said when we heard that Cleveland was out of it, they continued to work. And so they must've said, hey, let's go see if we can, isn't their owner like involved in gas? So I'm sure he has plenty of money right now.
That's right. He is probably rolling in dough at the moment. He's like, 230 million. Hold on. Let me check my back pocket. Let me check the couch in between the cushions. I might have that there.
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah. He's doing all right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, James Palmer put out the tweet. The Falcons thought they were close, very close to landing Watson. I mean, that's the reports that I was reading all day. He continues to say, and they were actually working something out. But late in the talks came even more demands, including more money and guarantees, per sources. This has to feel pretty terrible for the Atlanta Falcons, for Matt Ryan, for their fan base. I thought it was all but a certainty that the city of Atlanta was rolling out the red carpet to bring home, in some respects, one of their prodigal sons. And all of a sudden, it turns out that what talks the loudest isn't your home field. It isn't the hometown. It's the money.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing in New Orleans, right? Because that's been the talk, is it was between those two teams all along. And, the discussion had been that they were clearing out all this cap space to be able to bring in Deshaun Watson and all these kind of things. And then, now you're left with all these two different teams holding the bag. And who would have thought? I did not think Deshaun Watson to the Browns was going to be the destination.
I most definitely did not. I took him off the board. It is crazy, absolutely crazy. But, it is what it is. Now, if you are Matt Ryan, how are you feeling right now? After all that flirtation, after it seeming like it was over, now it's back to, oh, no, we're all good, Matt. We're fine. You can just stay here.
Yeah, and that's the other piece of it too, right? Is that with Ryan, we saw this with Baker Mayfield, right? When they went in on this right away, Baker Mayfield's like, "Oh, thank you so much for your time, Cleveland," and whatever. And then with Matt Ryan, once this news broke that Watson was going to the Browns, there was a report within minutes that Atlanta was still going to give Ryan a couple of days to decide his future, and so it sounds to me like there's a strong possibility that something happens there. I think someone in your comment section said that Ryan's requested a trade or whatnot. I don't see that on Twitter, but I could be missing it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Matt Ryan saying, you know what, send me somewhere else. I'm ready for a change of scenery.
Yeah, I mean, if I were him, I'd certainly think about that. He was the model sort of quarterback, right? Involved in the community. Never came out and said anything negative about the organization that I can recall. Not even throughout the process, as they were blatantly flirting with Deshaun Watson. You never really heard a peep from Matt Ryan. It seemed that he was going to allow this to unfold and just be quietly transferred to another team, traded to another team. But now I have to assume that they're having conversations, and I just can't imagine being spurred like that to where, you're in a relationship. The other person goes out, actively cheats on you, and then comes back and tries to sell you on the idea that it didn't mean anything. To me, I'm not buying it.
No, I'm not buying it either. I'm not buying it either. And real quick, while we're here, I mean, if you want to talk about where Matt Ryan should go, I mean, he's cheaper than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes.
Oh. He is truly cheaper than Jimmy Garoppolo. If a team traded for Matt Ryan today, they would get a player. They would get him for $1.5 million, almost $2 million less than Jimmy Garoppolo.
That is wild. That is wild. I want to talk about the quarterback dominoes, but we have a couple of super chats, and the first one takes us off of the quarterback topic, but that's okay. Charles Thurman, sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in at Rob. I think we get a right tackle on the offensive line, and Trey will be fine. I mean, I definitely, Charles, agree that offensive line has to be a focus for the 49ers. I was much more secure in my belief that Alex Mack was going to be back until my most recent guest had me second guessing that myself. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty, certainly at the two guard spots, definitely at the right tackle spot with Mike McGlinchey coming back from a very serious injury, and potentially at the center spot if Alex Mack decides that he's not leaning towards staying with the 49ers. So I agree that offensive line has to be a priority for the Niners. And so far, no moves there in free agency. I haven't even heard the Niners linked to any of the serious offensive line candidates.
Neither have I. I have not seen that. And I do think that it's a situation where do they need to upgrade from where they are right now to be able to go into 2022? Do they need like an immediate upgrade in terms of a free agent? Maybe not. I think if they don't get a free agent here, then that would tell me is that they're going to go that direction in the draft, because they do need to address that position. And I do think that they're going to have to pick somebody up, but it might not be through free agency. It might be a draft pick because there's some good ones available that can play right tackle in the draft.
Yes, I agree. That seems like an ideal place to address it. Big Dez coming in. Realistically, I don't think anyone is trading for Jimmy G. Organization got cute on this, trying to get too much. I agree with the second half of that, in that if the reports are to believe that as they came out, the 49ers did have significant interest. As I was out in Indianapolis for the Combine, I was hearing things that, yes, there was significant interest. And there were reports that maybe a 2 was on the table. If the 49ers did have that offer and they attempted to leverage that into more, then yes, they got too cute. I believe that in some way, shape, or form, the 49ers overplayed their hand. And I say that from the existing evidence that is out there. The idea that Carson Wentz got moved, right? If the Niners had been aggressive and asked for less, you would think they could have been the first domino to fall. But when they didn't act quickly, these other dominoes began to fall, and some of them were unexpected. The Tom Brady piece, even this Deshaun Watson piece to get the resolution on the criminal charges, I don't think was entirely expected. So it was these unforeseen circumstances, but it's left the 49ers in a pretty precarious situation right now.
It has. And I think really what happened here was there were some things that the 49ers didn't plan for, right? They felt like they were going to be able to move on from Garoppolo. I don't think the 49ers planned for the shoulder to be as injured as it was. They probably figured
Right.
that, he was injured, but didn't sound like there was going to be any kind of a surgery. So we should be able to move on. Teams will be able to meet with him and he'll be able to show that he's fine. Well, then they get the shoulder surgery. So now he can't throw until July. And then on top of that, all of a sudden now you have the Deshaun Watson thing come down. And so now the market completely blows up for the second time because the first wave was the Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And then, okay, well, that's
Right.
done. Now the 49ers he's going to Cleveland. Wentz has been traded. He's going to go to, no, he's not going to go to Cleveland. He's going to go to Indianapolis. It's done. And then as that talking, and all of a sudden, boom, here comes the Deshaun Watson stuff comes down. Okay, now he's going to be able to play. Now he's been traded. And where does he go? We know that he's not going to go to Seattle. The 49ers won't trade him to Seattle, but there's other landing spots, and it all just depends on what happens with Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield. And the 49ers are just kind of stuck. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him. I don't know if anybody's going to, I shouldn't say I don't think. I don't know if anybody's going to trade for him with a shoulder injury. I think that's one really been a bigger stumbling block than I originally thought it was going to be.
That's an interesting one. And honestly, I have stood my ground on believing that the Niners will be able to trade him and will be able to get a reasonable asset in return. The news continues to test my resolve in that way. Everything that comes out is one more step closer to, would the 49ers actually cut Jimmy Garoppolo? So before examining that piece, Jack, how long would you reasonably see the 49ers holding on to Jimmy Garoppolo before they would legitimately debate, should we just cut him?
I think it could be through, what did I just say about? I'd say maybe not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, just to kind of put it. This Tuesday is going to be a big day if Matt Ryan doesn't make a decision before then, because that's when his deal changes with Atlanta with as far as his contract.
Right.
And so that's kind of another data to point to if you're looking for some time period. So I would say probably a week after that. So I'm thinking maybe 2 Tuesdays from now. We might have some direction on what happens with Jimmy Garoppolo. And if he's not done by then, I think he's stuck with the 49ers. The 49ers are stuck with him throughout the summer, which would be I think it's a big miscalculation for them.
It really was. Swan Song coming in predicting July. That's a long time to be focused on this one aspect. I don't honestly know if I can take the stress of dealing with Jimmy Garoppolo on the 49ers until July. I'm just going to be frank about that. I'm just going to throw it out there that I would struggle with dealing with this storyline through there. The quarterback dominoes are an interesting thing to consider because now you obviously have Baker Mayfield, and Jeff Howe put out this tweet today. Baker Mayfield has informed the Browns that he'd prefer to be traded to the Colts, per sources. Earlier this week, prior to Mayfield's trade request, the Browns said they would work with him on a trade. We'll see if they'll accommodate such a move to the AFC, though. So in going through the teams that seem most likely in need of a quarterback, Colts, Saints, Panthers, Seahawks, I agree with you. The Seahawks are out as a destination for Garoppolo. Which of those three do you see as the most likely landing spot for Baker Mayfield? I guess throw Seattle back in because it's definitely not off the books for Baker. But of those four, yes, Colts, Saints, Panthers, Seahawks, do you see a more obvious landing spot?
I don't really see. I mean, if I'm Cleveland and I don't want him to be in the NFC, then I think Seattle makes good sense, and because they have the capital to give you a pretty good draft pick in return or two.
Right.
Maybe New Orleans. I don't know. When it comes to Baker Mayfield, I haven't really been paying attention to him so much. I mean, I think that the whole thing here is if Matt Ryan says he wants to be traded too, then we're back to square one with Jimmy Garoppolo too.
That is the issue because this game of musical chairs just keeps changing on the 49ers. You keep inserting new names into the equation. We thought we had pulled Tom Brady out of the musical chair mix. No, he's back in it. I doubted that Russell Wilson was legitimately going to get moved. Turns out he did, right? That it is surprising. And each one of these names keeps cutting in front of Jimmy Garoppolo. It is this horrible cycle of cutting the line each time it's like, oh, okay, Jimmy's next. Oh, nope, Jimmy's not next anymore. Now it's someone else. And that's where we are again, because Baker has seemingly cut in front of Jimmy Garoppolo. It would seem like the Baker Mayfield domino has to fall before Jimmy gets moved. Is that a fair statement in your book?
It seems like everybody needs to go before Jimmy Garoppolo for whatever. It's almost like he's the ugly duckling that's going to get picked up at the end of the dance.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it looks like. And Cal's Chronicles over in the comment section, he said, he was telling you to keep the faith. They need somebody to keep the faith when it comes to Garoppolo. And I'm kind of with you. I feel like there should be somebody that's going to trade for him. But I think if we're talking about Garoppolo, I would say that's the spot to watch is New Orleans. Do they get
interesting?
Do they get Jameis Winston?
Right.
Does Jameis Winston want to go back there? Does he go back there without Sean Payton there? Does he end up in Carolina? If Carolina had the money to go out and make the move for Deshaun Watson, and then they'd have the money to get a Garoppolo if they wanted him, or they could maybe go out and grab Jameis Winston in free agency if they feel like he's better. So there's spots. I don't know.
And the other piece is, if Atlanta can make up with Matt Ryan, that would be huge news for the Niners.
It would be helpful for it would be helpful for 49ers, or heck, maybe Atlanta just decides that they want to go ahead and get a quarterback since they screwed up last year. And maybe they want to bring Garoppolo in there. I mean, as a bridge for a couple of years. Who knows? I mean, the reason I bring up New Orleans is because they were a name during the scouting combine. I think their name was actually the first one. The first destination before Indianapolis was New Orleans.
Right.
That New Orleans was hot on the Garoppolo trail. So
I will definitely keep my eye there until they sign Jameis Winston. To me, that feels like a legitimate landing spot. Chris Knight coming in with the super chat. Do you think the 49ers keep Jimmy right until the draft, hoping a team gets desperate and gets cold feet on the draft prospects and trades for Jimmy? I honestly believe that this thing could go as far as any of the organized team activities, camp, like anything that doesn't require Jimmy to come out and get on the field. I feel like the Niners could keep him up until then. I do not believe that he will be there for any practices, anything that could risk injury to Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't see a circumstance where they renegotiate the contract and he stays on the team. And so therefore, to me, it's just a matter of time of when he is traded or released. And I see that as too high of a risk. If you're going to trade or release someone, you don't want them practicing. You don't want them to get injured. You can't have him, experience an injury that allows him to then stay on the team, earn his entire salary, and not contribute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If he's going to be around, he needs to be the backup quarterback. But how crazy would that be to have Jimmy Garoppolo and you're paying him $25.5 million and have him be your backup quarterback?
Unbelievable, Jack. It would be unbelievable. And yet here we are having to actually consider it, having to view it as a legitimate possibility, one that's a small percentage, one that I don't believe is going to happen, but a possibility nonetheless. That Niner guy, Sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. The Niners are the kid on the playground trying to trade their bad lunch for everyone else's hot lunch. Their bag lunch for everyone else's hot lunch. Even the kids on the playground say no. Yeah, you're not getting somebody's pizza that day when you brought in the cold turkey sandwich, right? That ain't happening.
Rob, let me have your piece of pizza, Rob. Or you can have my bologna sandwich. What do you say? Fair trade? I'll throw in a bag of chips too.
That ain't happening. I mean, it was so funny. As of this morning, Matt Barrows was throwing out the musical chairs QB edition tweet, and I was all excited about playing it, right? You got Matt Ryan going to the Colts, Jameis Winston to the Saints, Baker Mayfield to the Seahawks, and Jimmy Garoppolo to the Browns. But then all of a sudden, Deshaun Watson comes in and destroys the party, right? It just looks like a bad situation. And it does appear that the 49ers have, through their own action or inaction, and we have to interpret what actions or inactions they took, along with any news that has been reported. It certainly seems like they have played a role in this, and that role that they played was in screwing up this situation.
Yeah. Well, and then here's another spot nobody's talking about. Maybe you can throw this destination in there too. Houston. Maybe Houston is a destination for a Jimmy Garoppolo or
that's true.
Or someone, I understand that they might be high on Davis Mills. They might like Davis Mills. I'm not sure. I mean, last year, once last year they were just a dumpster fire all the way along. Once the whole thing started going on with Deshaun Watson, they didn't really have any other choice. Is Watson? Do they feel like Mills is better than Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't think you can say that. I don't think you can say that Davis Mills cost wise, and I don't know all their salary cap structure, all that kind of stuff, but
Right.
you know that they have draft picks now because they just picked up 3 firsts, and I think there was another round that was thrown in there. I mean, if you're them and you're sitting there with 2 firsts already and a second and everything else, maybe you throw a second over there and you bring Garoppolo in for a couple of years and go that direction. So there's a lot of, that's a name too. It's another location. I'm not an insider who knows a whole lot about these other operations, but that just would seem like a potential landing spot.
It does seem like a potential landing spot. And just to cover, one of the things standing in the way of getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo is that ginormous contract relative to what he produces on the field. Certainly is a leader. We've heard that over and over again, has his value, but is his value commiserate with where he is paid? And it came out this morning. It was a topic on Twitter that went out that Jimmy Garoppolo currently earns 12.7% of the 49ers cap. That is currently being eaten up just having Jimmy on the roster, waiting to trade him. And what sort of an impact does that have on the San Francisco 49ers going into free agency? I thought it was great that Dieter Kurtenbach had put out that 12.7% figure originally, I believe, and then followed up on it with a tweet that says, I can't believe that no one wants to trade for a quarterback that has the 9th highest cap hit for 2022, will not be able to throw until training camp at the earliest, has a prodigious injury history, melted down in the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game, and was meh in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Now, I find that to be a little bit harsh on Jimmy Garoppolo, but it is fair to point out that what some of these teams are dealing with is this gigantic cap hit that comes with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, again, I go back to the Niners' missteps because clearly that didn't stand in the way of someone like Carson Wentz getting traded to the Washington Commanders. And so do you think that when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo and the reasons he hasn't been traded yet, where would you attribute the biggest issue? Is it the salary? Is it the shoulder? Is it the surgery on the shoulder? Or is it that the 49ers overplayed their hands? What sense do you get of the biggest impediment to trading Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think the biggest issue is the injury to the shoulder.
The shoulder.
Because he can't throw right now. If he could throw, I think we're talking about him moving. I think he'd probably be gone already, or the discussions would be a lot further down the line. Not being able to throw until July 1 or what have you. That's a big issue for these teams, I believe. I understand you can talk to the doctors, you can talk to people, whatever. You throw that in with the other injury history, but it is really the shoulder, I think, is the biggest one.
And at some point, that money becomes relevant. Right now, he's 12.7% of the cap. The top 5 players, and this is according to Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, put this out on Twitter. The top 5 contracts on the 49ers account for, I'm doing some quick math in my head here, so this will be a little bit off, but about 34% of the 49ers cap. Jimmy Garoppolo, $29.95 million, 12.7%. Trent Williams, $13.98 million, 6.7%. Jimmy Ward, $12.9 million, 6.1%. Mike McGlinchey, $10.8 million, 5.1%. And Nick Bosa, $10.8 million as well, 5.1%. So the question becomes, is Jimmy Garoppolo's salary going to become, or has it already become, something that has prevented the 49ers from signing any of the free agents out there right now? Do you think the Niners are missing out on key additions because they have Jimmy on the roster?
It's certainly a possibility, right? We don't know for sure, but it's certainly a possibility because they've been linked to so many guys that have gone elsewhere. So it's certainly a possibility that it's happened. It's a tough call. If they get rid of him, they have. The hard part about it, and the reason that I'm having a hard time with this, is because we don't know how much. We don't know the contracts of the guys that they have signed. We only know of one. The only one that we know for sure that I've seen so far since before I started doing shows a couple of hours ago was Hassan Ridgeway. I've seen his contract. It's only 1.8 million cap hit for this year. I don't know about the others. So with the 49ers only had 9.15 million in cap space, so they probably could fit all the guys that they've signed already, but they're going to have to make some moves. If they're going to sit here with Jimmy Garoppolo, they're going to have to do some other work on their salary cap to bring anybody else in. Is Jimmy Ward willing to do an extension? Is Samson Ebukam willing to do an extension or some kind of a redo of his deal? Because if I'm Samson Ebukam, I'm not allowing them to just lower my money without giving me
No way.
future years,
Right.
Because I want to have some kind of a guarantee, because are they asking me to take a pay cut because they're going to go out and sign a guy that's going to replace me at this point?
Right.
So,
that's your leverage as the player. It's like, hey, you want me to do you a favor, you got to scratch my back too.
Yeah. So can they move some guys around? There's not very many. They're running out of players to go to. I saw a piece on Twitter from Jason Hurley that is the 49ers cap stuff. And he's right on the money in terms of there's only so many guys you can get, because when you start to do these restructures, it's all about what's their, how much base salary do they have? Because that's what they're doing, right? They're converting base to signing bonus, which then gets spread out. And if you don't, and 49ers don't have very many guys that they can do it with, because they've already done it with their top guy, the two top ones. Now, you can do it with Trent Williams, but he's old. I don't want to do it with Trent Williams.
Right. That comes with significant risk.
Yes. And they're just running out of folks to do it with. So
you only need two things in order to kick the can down the road further and further and further. You need an owner with extremely deep pockets and access to cash that can pay that upfront bonus. But you then need to have contracts that have high base salaries that you can convert to bonuses. And the Niners are, in fact, running out of those. There's still a few, and they haven't tapped those yet. Jack, you just mentioned a couple of them that would be options. So it indicates, because they haven't tapped into those last few remaining deals yet, it indicates that maybe they haven't come up against a free agent that they've had to pass on because of Jimmy Garoppolo. But you have no idea which of these bigger ticket free agents they would have been in the running for if they had Jimmy's salary off the books. It's always a possibility.
Yeah, and it's one of those. Well, I was just going to say really quick, because the issue with that is, like a J.C. Jackson, for example, his number was he had a big signing bonus, big contract. He's only counting $8 million against the cap this season for Los Angeles. So when you see a guy making 16, 18 million, you've got to see what their full contract is, because when you look at, if the 49ers didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo, they might have been able to sign Von Miller.
Right.
I understand what Von Miller's deal looks like, but depending on how you structure it, maybe it was only going to cost the 49ers $8 or $9 million against the cap if they had done that deal, or the Chandler Jones one, what have you, because I haven't seen them. So there's deals. If they had $25 more million, there's probably another one or two guys that they could have gone over the top for if they wanted to.
Amen to that. And I thought we were going to get that edge rusher on a deal and bring in Dante Fowler for a resurgence. He just got signed by the frickin' Dallas Cowboys, going back to reunite with his old coach there. Big Dez coming in, even without the injury to the shoulder. He has a so-so arm and at times is inaccurate. Same reasons we don't want him anymore is the same as why other teams don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. I would say there's fairness to that criticism, and the 49ers went out of their way to pay Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million last season to keep him on the books, and in doing so, did get themselves to the NFC Championship game. And it is that production that I believe, without the shoulder injury, to Jack's point, would have created an atmosphere where the 49ers could have traded Jimmy Garoppolo. I was never on the side where I thought Jimmy Garoppolo was going to bring in a first-round pick, but I did believe that he was going to warrant a second and a fourth. And I'm still holding out that the 49ers bring in a second rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo. I will gladly admit I'm wrong when it finally goes some other way, but I just think it's a supply and demand thing. And Jimmy is somewhere between the 15th and 20th best quarterback when healthy, and teams value that, because there's a lot of teams out there, we just mentioned a few, who don't have a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and then in terms of, are the 49ers missing out? I mean, we talked about a little bit, but if we go through what they've lost and what they've picked up, Sure, they may have missed out on somebody, but this roster is still really good,
Yes.
right? I think we could say that. And on top of that, it really comes down to the season is in 2022 is going to come down to if it's Trey Lance's team, does Trey Lance play better than Jimmy Garoppolo? That's
Right.
where that's where
Right.
it's going to come down, because everything else seems like it's going to be pretty much the same. Their left guard situation's different, their defensive tackle's different, but other than that, right now as it stands, and they don't have the one safety in the back with Tart. But other than those three, everything else is the same as a team that just went to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and if you can get the type of play out of Trey that we're all hoping for, the type of progression you saw from week 5 to week 17, I think that there is a good chance this team is as good as we believe they are going forward. So again, I kind of believe, and we'll get into this later, but I believe the 49ers are being rather conservative in their approach to this free agency. We'll get into that in a little bit. Greg Thames, sneakerhead on the channel. If they cut Jimmy, does another team sign him with a broken arm? My guess here, I'm interested to hear yours, Jack, and don't allow my answer to color it in any way. But my guess here is that Jimmy might actually not want to sign right away, because if he is signed right away, I would think that contract would reflect the fact that he can't throw. It would in some way be less than, because of the fact that he's not healthy when he signs it. He's got no reason to sign that deal until he can get in there and compete. And so I would think he might actually hold out for when he's healthy, and then could go around to the various teams and drum up the best deal available at that time.
Yeah, and then Jimmy Garoppolo does, if Jimmy Garoppolo's plan and his team's plan was for him to get cut by waiting for the shoulder, that's a major miscalculation on their part, because he's not going to get the kind of money on the free agent market that I think that he would if he gets traded. Because I don't think anybody really wants to deal with $25 million cap hit. So I think there would have been a chance for him to go somewhere, cash in on a signing bonus this year, deal with a little bit lower cap hits in the next couple of years, but he's not going to get this kind of money anywhere else on the free market.
Yeah. Weird Beard coming in with the comment, where's Jimmy's value? No team wants him. I think this is an important thing to call out, is that it's not that no team wants Jimmy Garoppolo. It's that the 49ers have not been able to orchestrate a deal to this point. And that could be for many reasons. That could be because teams are wary of the shoulder injury. That could be because the 49ers were asking for too much draft compensation. I think you can be rest assured in the idea that there is a market for him by listening to the reports of teams interested, by listening to the reports. Looks like Jack may have dropped off, but we will see if he comes back. By listening to those reports of teams interested in him, by listening to the reports of attempted trades that teams wanted to get done, but the Niners may have been asking for too much. That may be the difference between getting a deal done and not. And the outside factors of some of these other quarterbacks coming into play that weren't expected for the 49ers. So this confidence that John Lynch had about getting a deal done for Jimmy Garoppolo may have been false confidence created by a slimmer market of quarterbacks. Come to find out, the reality is there were more quarterbacks moving this offseason than he anticipated. And therefore, he wasn't prepared for the way in which the market played out for Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, getting to another super chat here. 49 Glory coming in. Jimmy is 15 to 20 if healthy, but that's a big if. That is a big if. Obviously, Jimmy has not been healthy for an entire season for quite some time. But, it is something that teams, I think, look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's part of the reason that he's only worth a second rounder. If Jimmy were healthy all the time and played at the level that he played when healthy, I would have gotten on board with Jimmy being worth a first at that point. But yes, I agree that it is a big if around Jimmy's health. Welcome back, Jack.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, quite all right.
Yeah, 15, 20, that sounds about right for Garoppolo, I think, somewhere in that ballpark.
That seems like the right, debatable range for me. All right, let us transition here into, we got another super chat. Got to hit it. LA Blue 49. I feel our front office is playing us. They never intend to move on from Jimmy G, either by trade or by cutting him. He'll be on our roster this season. Shaking my head. I get the frustration, and it does seem like an endless game of just, go around. I don't know what game it is. It's a game that's exhausting, though, and it's a game I've never enjoyed. But this game seems to be unending. And I do think I understand where that emotion comes from. I cannot wrap my head around the idea of any situation that puts Jimmy Garoppolo back onto the 49ers this season. When I think about the locker room dynamic of bringing Jimmy back, when I think of the emotional toll on all the players, on Jimmy Garoppolo as well, he said his farewells. I just can't see him coming back. Jack, do you see any scenario where Jimmy remains with the Niners this season?
I don't know if there's a way that they can. I mean, there are ways that they can move money around to make it work. It's just you're looking at a lot of moving around of different parts. And I think if Jimmy Garoppolo is here, it's the worst case scenario for a swap over to Trey Lance. Having both of those guys in the same room. If Garoppolo's healthy, it's tough to move on, and especially if they because. And the other piece with it too is if he is here throughout this year, they're going to let him go for nothing next year, which they might end up having to anyway. But I don't know. It just they've overplayed. If he's here in July, if he's here in August, they've overplayed their hand massively, and it's a big mistake.
Massively.
I mean,
massively.
I could understand him being here, and the 49ers, could swap. I'm doing 49ers PR right here with what I'm going to say. They could swing it as he's gonna be we're gonna go with Trey Lance, but we're gonna keep Jimmy in because Jimmy is an experienced vet. They work good together. They enjoy each other, and it's gonna work out for the best for everybody on the 49ers. And then they're gonna overspend on him this year, and he'll be gone next year. I mean, I could see that being the spin with them not trading him. They're not going to
you just got me worried because I could hear John Lynch telling me that. You were just saying if I close my eyes, I could hear it. I could hear John Lynch spinning that. Oh, yeah. I hope it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Tom Jensen coming in at Rob and Jack. When every quarterback vacancy is filled, if Jimmy is still here, he says but I say if Jimmy's still here, why not cut him when the compensation is less valuable than the cap room? This is an interesting one to me because the other thing that they have to balance it with, if you're purely doing it for the cap standpoint, is you have to ask yourself, well, do we need the cap right now, or do we wait until he can pass a physical so that we don't have to give him his $7.5 million injury guarantee? Because that is still in play. Is that correct, Jack?
Yeah, if they were to cut him today, they would be paying him $7.5 million. So it wouldn't be the full 25.5. It'd be 18.8 is what they would save if they cut him. So is it, why not cut him when the compensation is less valuable than the cap room? Because I don't know if the cap room is more valuable at this point. Do the Niners really want to go out and spend big money on any of the remaining, or is there anybody out there that they want to really go out and get? Or
That's
are they just
a fair question?
Because it doesn't seem like it. And, they did spend out on Ward, but other than that, they're shopping special teams, which is, I got to give them credit. I think they're addressing one of their biggest issues from the last 2 years. But it's a really tough question that Tom asks because I fall on both sides of this and I've been falling more on the side of they're screwing this up in the last 24 hours than I was before.
Me too. This is a great point to say, hey, if you enjoy this content, you watching Jack and I loving this, make sure that you like this video and consider subscribing to this channel. And Jack has a fantastic YouTube channel as well that is located down below in the description. There's a link. You should go over there, follow Jack Hammer on YouTube. You can find a link to his Twitter account as well. And you got to go and bookmark the Santa Rosa Press Democrat 49ers blog. It is a fantastic space. Jack is constantly putting out content there. Want to make sure that you guys have that information. Weird Beard coming back in with super chat. I just feel there's better options still out there for teams than Jimmy Garoppolo. I agree, but to me, it's just Baker Mayfield and maybe Matt Ryan. And even with Baker, I don't know that that's a clear upgrade for me. To me, it depends on what you want. I mean, when I hear the Colts talking about wanting a leader or an adult in the room, I'm then pretty shocked when they talk about bringing in Baker Mayfield as their next quarterback? Because if there's one question mark for him, it seems to be the leadership aspect.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, the quarterbacks that are out there, I think Matt Ryan, you might want to say, I would maybe say, is a better option right now for Jimmy Garoppolo than Jimmy Garoppolo. Baker Mayfield, he's younger. I don't know how much better he is. I think they're kind of in the same tier. I think all the quarterbacks are the guys that are starters right now that are on the market possibly are all about that same tier of a quarterback. The free agent guys that I hear outside of Jameis Winston, I think people are crazy to think that they're better than these guys. And I'm sorry about when I say that, I'm talking about Marcus Mariota and those guys. Marcus Mariota, I think, is a really good backup quarterback. I don't think he's a starter. Jameis Winston can be a starter. He played pretty darn good last year in New Orleans. But outside of that group, it's Garoppolo, it's Winston, it's Ryan, it's Mayfield. Those four for 5 seats.
Right. To me, it's not very many options out there, and therefore you have to consider Jimmy Garoppolo. Jerome comes in with a good question here. Rob, how do you become a sneakerhead? I mean, that is an important question. You got to know how to join the channel. It's pretty easy unless you're on, I think it's an iPhone where it's a little bit difficult. You'd have to open a web browser format, I've been told. But anyway, you hit subscribe, and then once you subscribe, there's a little join button there, and you have an option to join the channel, so you can do it that way. It's easy to do on a web browser, supposedly pretty easy to do on an Android as well through the app. The Apple version makes it a little difficult. That's surprising. Apple generally makes things a little more difficult, but in this instance, they make it a little bit harder. All right, let's transition to that next topic. Jack, what did you see as the biggest holes for the 49ers heading into free agency? What were those holes in the roster that you said to yourself, we need to fill those when we get into free agency?
I had said, what was it? Speed receiver, cornerback, slot corner. They need to fill that role. A safety. I think those were the biggest ones, maybe an edge and a tackle as well.
Nice. So the vast majority of those, the 49ers have yet to address. Is that correct?
Really? Yeah, really. They haven't added, well, they added the corner. I don't know about slot corner if they've really done anything there. They kind of added a safety, but he's more of a backup, special teams kind of player. If they decide to roll with Talanoa Hufanga instead of going with a safety in the draft or bring another one in free agency, I think it's going to be really interesting on the back end of the 49ers defense. I like Talanoa Hufanga, but I don't think he's good enough to be a starting safety in the NFL. I think he'd be better off inside.
Does that move of signing the safety today, George Odom, does that signal to you that it's at least possible that's the Niners' plan to roll into next year with the three-headed monster of a competition going on between Tavarius Moore, Talanoa Hufanga, and now George Odom?
That's the direction that it kind of points to me, is that's the route that they're taking, because the money that Odom got seems very similar to what you would have expected Tart to get if they were to bring him back.
That seems like a risky plan in my book. I was fearful that they would go cheap at that position, and this move signifies that that's at least a possibility. Castro 007 saying, I want to see Niners versus Raiders in the next Super Bowl. Hey, the Raiders look pretty exciting, man. That trade for Davante Adams caught me off guard. Jack, did you see that coming to where Aaron Rodgers would have, and I don't know that I believe it, but the rumor is Rodgers knew that when he came back, that meant Davante was going to be elsewhere. But now you have a huge move in sending Davante there. What did you think of that big time trade going down?
Yeah, I thought it was wild. It's a really good move for Vegas. I'm excited to see. I'm a Niner fan, but I'm excited to see what happens when you put Derek Carr and Davante Adams on the field together again. They're college teammates, but Davante Adams, I think they both made each other a lot of money in terms of their draft stock because of what
that
they
is true
in Fresno State. So I think that should be a matchup between those two guys that just boom right away takes off. And it sounds like this was a deal that's been in the works for a couple of weeks. From what I've heard, it sounds like it was something where it was partly about the money, but it got to the point where Adams was like, you know what, I'm not going to come back. It sounds like the Packers had asked for had offered him more money, and he's like, I'm not playing for you. I want to go somewhere else. And so want to play for the Raiders, and that's where they sent him.
Tired of the drama, and I guess has an off-season home in Las Vegas as well. You never know some of these secondary motivations for guys, whether it's being closer to family, they have an off-season home, a coach that they used to play with. I mean, these are human beings. They make complicated decisions. It oftentimes is about the money, but not always. And in this case, it does sound like he turned down a more lucrative offer to stay in Green Bay and instead wanted out.
Yeah, well, what I read was that he just purchased the house in Vegas like in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, well, that's a hell of a signal.
Yeah. So it sounded like that
the I'm out move.
Yeah, that goes along with what you just said about Rodgers realizing that he wasn't coming back even when he signed his deal.
Right. Vinnie Mac coming in at Rob. It's the left shoe and the right guest. I really enjoy you guys. Thank you for everything you do to bring us all this fantastic content. Like and subscribe, guys. You won't regret it. I just like that. Anytime there's a compliment for me, a compliment for you, I'm going to bring that on. People should know I am a sucker for flattery. That is absolutely the case. MGM Productions coming in. Plan if Tart, Key, and K'Wan Williams walk. I have to say, my reaction to this particular comment is I think that most likely Tart and K'Wan do walk. Key's the only one that I really still have my eye on, and I'm encouraged by the fact that he is still available. I would think that's one of the three that the Niners might prioritize bringing back, but if they don't, I would see Tart. We just talked about the fill-in where it looks like they're going cheap there. They brought in the newest signee, George Odom, but then you have Tavarius Moore recovering from the quad tear, but the Achilles tear, and then Talanoa Hufanga, the fifth round selection from last year. That would seem like the plan for Jaquiski Tart. For K'Wan, I liked Matt Barrow's suggestion that you could see a similar circumstance to what the Niners did in 2011 with Chris Culliver and Carlos Rogers, where Carlos Rogers had comfort playing in the slot, the nickel position, and therefore on nickel downs, when the defense shifted from base to nickel, he would slide inside and Culliver would come off the bench and play the outside. That you could see a similar circumstance where Emmanuel Mosley plays starting on the outside in base downs, but on nickel slides inside to the nickel position, and Ambry Thomas comes in there. So I could see that as the fill-in. I don't know where you would get interior pass rush from if it's not Arden Key, and that's why I say he would be the top target in my opinion.
Yeah, Arden Key. The move that they made there with Ridgeway. Ridgeway's a decent pass rusher. He
right.
gives them this. Ridgeway basically is I know people were talking about him being a DJ Jones replacement. I think he's more of a Contavious Street replacement as that second guy off the bench. Street was a little bit more better as a run stopper, Street was a little bit better as a pass rusher than he was as a run stopper. That's kind of the role that Ridgeway fills. If you look at their numbers from last year, they're very similar to each other. So I think the Ridgeway deal helps out a little bit with the pass rush on the interior as their second level guy. Is Key going to come back? Right now, here's the thing: they don't have any money, so
right.
None of these guys can come back. I know that there's been some deals announced, but with the money that we know that they have, I don't know how that all works out because either these guys have some really heavily backloaded deals that we'll find out, and they're basically but that doesn't sound right when you look at the. When you look at the guarantees on a deal for like Ward, I think
right,
$26 million guaranteed, which is almost $9 million a year.
Here's a suggestion. Matt Schuh, one of our sneakerheads here on the channel, brought in that escaped my mind, but it was on the topic list that we were going to get to eventually. But Kerry Hyder was just cut by Seattle. That could be an interesting addition to get a little bit of the interior pass rush back. I mean, certainly in 2020, he was productive. Do you see that as a potential reunion for the San Francisco 49ers?
He's more of an outside rusher. That's right. He's pretty much playing the Nick Bosa role in 2021 because once Bosa went out, he took his spot pretty much. So, I think they really like maybe they do, and maybe the thought here is that they're going to turn Charles Omenihu into the Kerry or the Arden Key role. as your pass rushing interior guy, because they did do that with him a little bit. So maybe they do that. Maybe Hyder comes back who's like your backup to Nick Bosa. It all depends on the money, but that I wouldn't be against it. Hyder has shown in his career that he does very well playing for Chris Kosaric.
No doubt about it. And there has been production. For some reason, I was remembering him as an interior pass rusher, but now that you say that, makes perfect sense. Jerome M. figured out the instructions to become a sneakerhead on the channel and has become a sneakerhead on the channel. Jerome, welcome. Welcome. All right, let's talk a little bit about any regrets that you have. Were there any of the players that the Niners let walk in free agency, or any that are still out there that they haven't brought back, where you have a regret that they were allowed to leave, or that you would regret if they do end up with another team? Or are you okay with the 49ers and how they've operated in allowing some of their own players to get some more lucrative deals elsewhere?
As far as the biggest regrets of what they've lost so far, I wouldn't say that I really have a big regret. I think the one that I was most bummed about was Mostert, just because I feel like they could have used his explosiveness on the offensive side. But beyond that, I feel like the rest of them are guys who, you're not going to overpay for Laken Tomlinson and DJ Jones, and these other guys are going out and getting deals. Contavious Street, got a nice little deal so I don't know the left guard and the defensive tackle, I guess, outside of Mostert, but I think Mostert for me.
Yeah, to me, those price tags for the left tackle and the defensive left guard and defensive tackle just got out of hand for the 49ers, so it's understandable that they allowed them to walk. Raheem Mostert, I had my eye on a 1-year, $3 million deal, so it was painful to see him sign with Miami for a 1-year, $3 million deal. That's exactly not what I wanted to see. So, yep. Yeah, that was a tough one. And we're going to get to watch him in McDaniel's system, and he's probably going to have success, and we're going to be like, dude, we missed out on that for $3 million. We could have had that. Oh, if he doesn't get hurt this year, we are really going to regret that.
Well, and they play in Levi Stadium as well.
Oh, my goodness. It just gets worse and worse and worse, Jack. All right. Well, I want to know, is there anybody out there? Niners don't have the cap space because they, can't get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo's strategy. But assuming they could magically find some cap space, is there anybody out there, Jack, that you have your eyes on that to you is of interest, that is a legitimate type of candidate that the Niners might try to bring in?
Is Terrell Edmonds, has he been signed yet? I don't think he has.
I hadn't seen anything. I tried to keep my eyes on him. I'm going to check on it right now. That's the safety coming out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't think he's been signed, but that would be the one for me. Would be Terrell Edmonds. I think he fits in really well with that position.
He has not been signed. I'm guessing that there would be a news story. I just did the quick search, and there is no news of a signing of him. So I think that he's still available. And you did mention him as soon as Eric Reed came off the board. He was your next target at safety, correct?
Yeah, exactly. As soon as Justin came down, yeah, and so that would be the next one for me. I don't want to.
Did I just say Eric Reed? Did I just call Justin Eric? I did, didn't I?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's all right. I mean, they are brothers. It's close enough. One can be exchanged for the other. That's an interesting target for me. To me, I also have my eye on the wide receivers because it feels like the Niners need to add a couple, right? I mean, they only have 4 on the books right now. I like the idea of getting one in the draft, but it also feels like there are a couple guys out there that would be intriguing. I'd be okay to take a flyer on like a Will Fuller. I know Niners fans are, hey, don't bring in any guys with injury histories, but this is the NFL. Everybody gets injured. Sometimes you have to take a chance. That to me feels like the kind of signing that could help fill out a room like that. I brought up the Julio Jones name as a potential wide receiver. Again, there are a lot of names that intrigue me if the price is right.
Yeah, I like Julio Jones as well. I think if the 49ers go the route of a Julio Jones, I think it signifies a little bit of a change in their offense. The 49ers were, the name, one of the names that had been out there that got picked up today was Austin Hooper. And that's because of the 49ers, maybe going out and getting another number 2 tight end kind of role. If the 49ers, I can see an offense where you have Juwan Jennings be your number 4 receiver / number 2 tight end, in a way, not as a tight end that's already going to put his hand in the dirt, but
Right.
as a guy who kind of lines up in that spot for blocking purposes and running routes and things like that, where the fronters are in more of like an 11 personnel or situation, but still able to run all of their stuff out of it because of his physicality. And then you also get Julio Jones out there with them. I could see that offense working really.
Yeah, I mean, they love positional versatility. He certainly has the size for it. That would be interesting. All right, I got to celebrate it. Weird Beard is our latest sneakerhead on the channel. Weird Beard, welcome. We support beards of all types on Rob Schuh's channel. They don't have to be perfectly groomed. They can be weird beards. Whatever you got. Beards are fantastic. I am going to try and get that message out to more and more people. We need more facial hair. Jack, are you ever considering growing a beard?
Am I ever considering growing up? I got a beard. Little.
That's okay. Yes,
I mean,
that counts. That counts.
It's very well. I tell my girlfriend it's blonde, but it's lighter than blonde. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. I approve. I approve of all beards at this point. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where the Niners stand right now. They have clearly added some people: Charvarius Ward, Ray McLeod, Oren Burks, Hassan Ridgeway, George Odom. They have a lot of free agents still out there, their own guys who haven't been signed, but there have been more signed than we've brought in. The guys that have found new homes: Laken Tomlinson, DJ Jones, Raheem Mostert, Trenton Cannon, Trent Sherfield, Tom Compton, and Kentavious Street. That was as of this morning. If anyone else was signed since then, I apologize. Do you see that as the Niners getting better, staying the same, or a little bit worse after the losses and additions?
I think they're pretty close to the same. I think they might be a little bit better on the corner. I think they're better in special teams. I think they took a little bit of a step back, possibly at left guard and defensive tackle. But outside of that, as a whole, I think they're okay. The most of their losses are guys that were depth pieces anyway, that they're going to be bringing in other depth pieces to replace them. So I think they're right in that same ballpark. And I go back to what I said earlier. It's all about the quarterback. And if it is going to be Trey Lance this year, it depends on what he does. And if it's Jimmy Garoppolo and they decide to go that route, have it help us, I think they'll be, I think they'll be okay too if he's, because they'll have two good quarterbacks or decent quarterbacks.
That's spectacular. I look at the losses list and it's longer. We've lost more people than we've brought in. And I look at the names on the losses list and I think, oh, Lord, Laken Tomlinson, DJ Jones, Raheem Mostert, like those are valuable losses. But then when I start to consider the players that are immediately behind them that will be given a chance to step in, I tend to be much more in line with what you just described there, to where I feel the Niners have been able to maintain their roster to this point. They've improved in some areas, they've dropped off in some areas, but overall, I still see them as an extremely talented team that should be able to compete in the same way that they did. And their success, as you just said, will hinge largely on the production of Trey Lance and how he looks when he is under center. How Dog has now joined the channel as well. We got sneakerheads coming in left and right, Jack. I am loving it. Love having the support on the channel. Much appreciated.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. I want to transition here to, it appears the Niners have gotten the memo. Special teams does actually matter, right? Significant investment, starting with the replacement of Richard Hightower. They brought in a long tenured special teams assistant who had been with Seattle for a decade, a part of some very successful units there. So they invested in bringing in a new coach, which was a necessity. But then they've turned around and they've added 3 individuals that should greatly benefit the special teams unit. I mean, hell, Hassan Ridgeway might even play a snap or 2 in special teams. So maybe there's 4. But certainly they have invested in a couple of coverage guys, you would think, in George Odom, who was an all-pro special teams guy in 2020 or Pro Bowl, one or the other. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. Apologize if I'm wrong about that. They brought in Ray McLeod, who is a phenomenal returner, and then Oren Burks, who is the linebacker from Green Bay, who was another solid coverage guy. And so a couple of dudes to shore up the coverage unit where they lost Trent Sherfield, who was a good gunner there, and then a stud returner in Ray McLeod. Were you surprised by the 49ers turnaround and investment on special teams?
Yeah, a little bit, because it wasn't, we all knew that they were going to need to get better in that spot. So I was a little, I guess, surprised by it.
Right.
But also, and also when you look at those names, you also need to throw in Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who they brought back their
Yes.
own guy as one, and then also, they also have, you mentioned his name earlier, Tavarius Ward, who was a key special teams player for this team in 2019, a little bit in 2020 as well. He's coming back from injury, so they've really, like you said, the coach, the 3 free agents, their own, free agent that they brought back, plus Ward. I think it pays off, because this is the special teams cost the 49ers. We know one game during the regular season. It cost them the game in Seattle.
Yes.
Almost cost them the game, and it cost them it cost them 3 points again in the fourth quarter against the Cowboys. So it's definitely been an area of concern for the 49ers. I mean, like I wrote an article on it today, and when you watched the 49ers return a kick, it was almost worthy of a standing ovation if they returned the kickoff back to the 25-yard line. It was, for them, it was better for it to go into the end zone, because they were either going to get it at the 25 or in. For them to return it past the 25 was like, oh my God, what did I just see? It's the most amazing thing. And then you'd see them kick off, the other team would return it out to the 30 or 40, 30, 35, 40-yard line. So it's been an area that they need to address. And I think they're doing a good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, for an offseason where I have said and will continue to say, it appears the 49ers are being somewhat conservative in their approach to team building. That they don't appear to be taking swings for the fences. They have invested heavily in special teams. And I am a big believer, as Harbaugh always used to preach, that all you need to do is win 2 phases of the game. If your defense dominates and your special teams dominates, guess what? There's probably like a 95% chance you win that game. If your offense dominates and your special teams dominate, again, there is a healthy chance you win that game. And these can be pretty cost-effective moves, right? They can really stem the tide. They can turn the tide with regard to the special teams unit, but it's smaller dollar figures than if you're attempting to take a swing at increasing the productivity of your defensive unit or offensive unit. By the way, Jack, we got Power Fitness has become the latest sneakerhead. We just got the sneakerheads rolling today. They are
Power
coming
Fitness.
in.
That's a good one right there. Power Fitness.
Fitness.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. MGM Productions. Plan of attack for left guard and potentially right tackle. My sense of this, Jack, you know what? I have answered these first too much, and that's rude of me. What is your sense of addressing these 2 positions, Jack?
Come on, man. You got to let the guest go first, right? That's what you do.
That's right. It is the guest first every time.
My right off the top of the bat, I say that it's going to be Aaron Banks at left guard. That just makes a lot of sense. And then at right tackle, if McGlinchey doesn't come back, it's Jalen Moore. Those are the 2 for me right off the top that they spent the money there last year. Moore was a starter a couple of times last year, ended up making a few mistakes, and Brad Graham had a really good segment on my show last week where he went over why he lost his starting job at right tackle to Compton. But I just feel like Moore at right tackle makes too much sense, and if necessary, and that over on the other side it's going to be Banks. It's good if they don't draft or sign the guy, it's going to be a real good camp battle for that left guard spot between McKivitz and Banks and maybe Justin School as well. I mean, there's a number of guys the 49ers have that can go after that spot.
That's a great point, Jack. I agree wholeheartedly on Aaron Banks just being penciled in as that left guard starter. And then at right tackle, I would assume that we will actually see a signing there by the 49ers, something that brings in a vet at a reasonable cost, and then we see the camp competition. But if it is just purely a camp competition, I think you nailed all the names that I would expect to be in the running there. We have John Winans coming in just to be kind. Always appreciate people who just want to come in and be kind and drop a little bit and say, thank you. So thank you, John.
That's nice.
I appreciate that. Ooh. Someone asked any mods in here. I am here to take care of any mod needs, but I don't see anything that needs modding. Is anybody acting out in the chat? Please let me know if that is the case. But I don't see anything. See, Hendricks in here is like, hey, man, come on, get some mods going. But I don't see any bots. I don't see any crap talk. I don't see anything weird. let me know if there is. We'll take care of it. But yes, there are mods on the channel. I'm not sure if they're here at the moment. Let's finish this one out, Jack. Will Ray be more than a returner? This is continuing that special teams topic. This is transitioning it to the signing that, quite frankly, I think excited me the most. I mean, don't get me wrong, Charvarius Ward, I think, is a very good signing. But I had my eye on improving our kick return game, and Ray McCloud seems to do just that. But the contract would seem to indicate, well, it indicates that there were 6 other teams or 5 other teams interested, but it also would seem to indicate he may have a larger role. How do you view this addition for the 49ers?
Is my mic working?
It is.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I accidentally hit the button on it. I think that more than a returner, I don't know. When you look at what he did in Pittsburgh, the numbers weren't impressive. His numbers as a receiver have not been impressive yet. He's only averaged 7.1 yards per reception. How much of that is because of Ben Roethlisberger's limitations to push the ball down the field or do anything? That could be some of it. It also could just be the fact that Ray plays mostly from the slot and doesn't get those deep down the field routes. He's 5'9". That could be part of it too. I think they're going to try to utilize him as more than a return. I think they're going to try to use him as WB2, meaning wide back 2. I think that's
wide
kind of
back
the role
2
that they might envision for him, which means that, everybody's favorite wide back 2 and Cordero Patterson wouldn't be coming to the 49ers, but I could see that being the role that they envision for him.
Do you have any concern with the fumbles? I know that that's been brought up multiple times, and I'll be honest, when I went to go find the image of Ray that I was going to use on my broadcast last night, I found a lot of images of Ray with the ball out here in one hand as he's running. So he clearly is like the Deshaun Jackson type that will on occasion run with the ball out wide, completely unprotected. Do you have any fears about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That, especially on special teams, right? If he's fumbling on special teams as a return man, that's not okay. That's one of the things that they're trying to get away from, right? That's one of the issues there. If you go back and you listen to what Kyle Shanahan said, and again, I wrote this earlier today, but it's like, when it comes to special teams, I'm not spending time on just, fakes and things like that. I just don't want my special teams to lose the game for me.
Right.
And so if you have a punt return guy, and if Ray is returning kicks, and he fumbles the ball 4 times this year, that's going to be a really bad situation for the 49ers. So yes, there should be some concern around that with him.
And I feel like if Bobby Turner were still on the staff this year, I wouldn't worry about it because I think Bobby's a no-nonsense coach in my imagination, right? I've not met Bobby Turner. I've read about him considerably, but I just imagine that he would work with him as a ball carrier and just get that fixed. And maybe Anthony Lynn takes it upon himself to work with him and get that high and tight. Because I agree. I mean, Shanahan has talked about the importance of special teams, but has also said, like, hey, the first goal is don't fumble the ball, right? Like, don't turn it over to the other team. Make sure that we get the ball back on punt returns and kick returns. And so if that rears its ugly head, man, there's nothing worse than on a kick return having the pit of your stomach just unsettled because you're like, is he going to hold on to the ball this time? So to me, I hope that this is a much ado about nothing.
That's the goal. That's the hope.
That is the hope. That absolutely is the hope. In general, just in a closing thought, are you pretty pleased with the free agents that the Niners brought in? I know that I said Ray was one of my favorites there. I also was a big fan of the Charvarius Ward. Any that stand out to you as head scratchers, or you really were pleased with the addition when it happened?
Well, they're head scratchers in terms of that 3 of them. Nobody knew who they were, right?
Right.
Nobody knew who. And we'd heard a little bit about Ray McCloud just because Matt Barrows had been talking about him being a possibility. I think that's one of the reasons why anybody knew who he was. Nobody knew anything about Oren Burks or the one that was today from Odom.
George Odom.
Odom is a guy who. It was an all-pro last year, but nobody knows who the all-pros are on the special teams, like I said earlier. So, I think the moves are decent. The Charvarius Ward, I mean, just for the press conference, ender. I mean, he's a favorite of mine.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you
That
get
was
right down to
epic.
it, yeah. I mean, that was and that was fantastic. These guys asking a bunch of yeah.
Yeah, whack ass question. It's okay. Whack ass question is okay. I tweeted out. I said dibs on naming a segment "Whack Ass Questions" with Rob Schuh. So that is for sure going forward going to be a segment on my show.
I think that is something that would be a perfect Friday end of day segment if we get people to starting next Friday to come on here when we do this Friday show and do like a 10 minutes into the show and you guys ask us some whack ass questions, because what better way to finish off your week than some whack ass questions? That'd be a lot of fun.
Nothing better than whack ass questions to end the week, unless it's Alan Elizer coming in to be the newest sneakerhead on the freaking channel. I mean, we are just dropping people in left and right, and I'm enjoying it. The sneakerhead community continues to grow, and I will always celebrate it. Jack, this was a fantastic show. I know we're eating into your Friday night, so we want to get you out of here. Do you have any shows coming up on your channel? Which, again, the description is the link is down in the description of this video.
Well, before we came on, I had a show with Grant Cohen over on my channel. So if you guys want, you can go back over there after we're done and check that out. Just to, if you're driving or want to listen to us talk about 49ers a little bit more. Over the weekend, no, I don't think there'll be anything going on my channel unless the 49ers decide that they're going to make a big move, maybe trade a quarterback or something like that. I might.
Breaking news.
In that case, I'll get on and definitely be. But otherwise, the next time you'll see me on YouTube will be on Monday with the handsome fellow that I'm with today.
Yes, he is a handsome fellow. We're both handsome fellows. Well, that's fantastic. As always, Jack, it is a pleasure talking with you. I love the fact that you are a level-headed dude that is thoroughly informed on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm a big fan of the newspaper you're associated with, the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, as well. And the link for that blog is down below. Please do put that in your bookmarks wherever you get your 49ers information. You've got to include Jack's Press Democrat site there as well. Yes. So thank you all for joining us. We will be back. Oh, look at that. At the buzzer. It's always at the buzzer. At the buzzer, Jerome comes in. Glad to get this party started. Love the content. It's just a happy one.
There you go.
Just a happy one. I appreciate it. Hey, you guys know the drill. I will be back if there's any breaking news this weekend. You can count on it. You can follow me at The Left Shoe. Jack's Twitter information is down below as well. Follow us for that breaking news. But until then, cheers, 49er faithful.